Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. Today I'm continuing my series on ranking my 100 favorite albums. This time I'm at number 19, and number 19 on my list is Imagine by John Lennon. So stay tuned to hear my thoughts here on Jason the Old Millennial. Hello everybody, hope everybody's doing well here on a Tuesday late night doing this video. Feels like it's been a while since I've done my continued my 100 favorite albums. I'm in my top 20 now, so I'm getting down there. So these are absolutely amazing albums, and I'm going through. And yeah, number 19, another great one here, and this is Imagine by John Lennon. Came out in 1971, probably the greatest year of music. I think so many amazing albums. I have so many albums really high on my list from 1971. Incredible year, and this is definitely one. This is definitely my favorite John Lennon album. And I have the vinyl here. I'm on the showcase. Very cloudy kind of look there, and here he is looking up. I wonder if it should be like that. No. Him looking up in the clouds, it seems like. Yeah, this is his second studio album. Of course, his first one, I believe, came out maybe the year before, 1970, Plastic Ono Band, which I also had in my top 100 favorite albums. It was much earlier on the list, though it's also a very good album, and a lot of people, I think, like that one, prefer that one over Imagine. It's a little more raw emotionally, I think. People like that. This is definitely more produced, I think, album, and definitely it's got more prettier melodies, and yeah, just a lot more work on it. I think the first album he probably put out pretty quickly because the Beatles just broke up, and it's the first thing he put out. This one, again, not too long after the first one, so pretty quick turnaround. But man, he turned out some really good songs here. It went number one in the US and UK, so it did very well in both countries. Obviously, at this point, John Lennon's, the Beatles just broke up not too long ago, really just a year ago. And so John Lennon, obviously, and Paul, two most popular Beatles, probably in a sense. And so anything John's going to put out is going to get some buzz, and so this did as well, and that's probably why it went number one, besides it being a really awesome album. It's really interesting because I think Paul came out with Ram this year, and George Harrison came out with All Things Must Pass, I think, maybe. I can't remember what years they all came out pretty quickly after the Beatles broke up, I remember. But yeah, I really like Plastic Ono Band. It's a really good album, but yeah, I prefer this just a little bit over it. Like I said, I got this for my birthday. Actually, I bought this because I want to talk about it when I knew it was coming up on my 100 favorite albums. So definitely wanted to showcase it. Listened to it recently, in fact, on vinyl on my record player. And I've listened to it many times because, yeah, it's just a great album. Back in 2012, on the Rolling Stones 500 albums, top albums, whatever, it was number 80 on that list. I didn't see what it was in 2020 when they redid the list. I've a hard time finding which lists, Rolling Stones keeps updating their list, so I forget. And so when I look it up on Wikipedia, it just tells me in whatever year it was this, and so I just go by Wikipedia and go, well, I know in 2012 it was top 100 album, so I don't know if it was in 2020. Still, you can say pretty thought of album. Overall, critically very successfully, sold a lot of records. Yeah, definitely a big one for John Lennon. Like I said, yeah, you can say this or Plastic Ono Band are probably his two most people's best or favorite albums from John Lennon. We also, of course, and you have to talk about Imagine. Of course, the album's called Imagine, and the titled song, Imagine, of course, comes out here. And that is obviously the biggest song of John Lennon's career. I mean, nothing bigger than that one. I don't think you can even compete with that one. Just the success that it had commercially, and how you hear it all the time everywhere. I mean, maybe even commercials or movies. But even at the Olympics, I remember one year they were singing Imagine, like in the closing ceremonies, I think, probably in the English when they had in London. But the celebrities did this whole like YouTube or TikTok video where they're singing Imagine. When he died, of course, everybody was singing Imagine. it's just Imagine really encapsulates John Lennon, kind of his hippie values, I would say. The whole idea of the song is, imagine, we all got along, because we're talking about the Vietnam War and still going on, I think, at this time, maybe. And, or maybe it's getting close to ending, but yeah, you had the whole Vietnam War thing, which he was very much against. And so he was obviously very big on protesting the Vietnam War. And so Imagine was really like that hippie protest song of, why don't we all just get along, kind of thing. And that's kind of a big deal of John's life. He had so much turmoil in his life, and he did a lot of bad things and all that, but I think he was trying to turn a leaf in the 70s and become more of a peaceful person, of course, and getting married, settling down a little more, and yeah, and he loves singing songs about peace and all that anyways. But yeah, Imagine, obviously one of the biggest songs of all time. You can't deny that, I think. And I even have the documentary Imagine, which is kind of a documentary on John Lennon, basically after the Beatles. It kind of covers his whole life in the 70s, until he, of course, died in 1980, being assassinated and all that. But a really good documentary on him. And it's called Imagine because it's just the biggest song. Anyway, so yeah, I can't deny that's I have problems with the song. I guess we'll talk about it here. I still like the song. It still has a lot of great stuff to it. I think it's overused though, and it's problematic lyrically. It's problematic in some senses, but anyways, I had to get that out there. In fact, Imagine and It's So Hard was the only singles coming out of this album, and it went number 3 in the U.S., which I was kind of shocked it didn't go number 1. Like I said, it was by far the biggest song on the album and in his career, and like how that didn't go number 1 is another mystery to me. But you never know about rankings and stuff. It never goes like you think it would. There's also a documentary, I forget what it's called, I saw on Netflix some years ago. Netflix had a documentary I remember seeing it on Netflix, and it was all about John Lennon recording this album, and it was a very interesting documentary and a lot of footage I'd never seen before, which was great. But it was interesting because they, like, him and Yoko, of course, were married, and I guess Julian, was pretty young. I don't know if they had Sean yet at that point, but he bought a house like out in the country, I think, in England, and I think it was, and it's interesting hearing Julian Lennon. There's a lot of interviews with him talking about running around and playing in this area, anyways, and of course the house that they bought or they built or whatever had a recording studio in it, so they invited people over that they wanted to play with, and they came over and they recorded these songs that he wrote. And I believe Phil Spector was the one that was doing the engineering or whatever, and of course Phil Spector helped out with Let It Be, and he was a pretty big shot at this point. Phil Spector, of course, long before he was accused of murdering his wife and all that, and so he's a very problematic person. But and also because he had the wall of sound, they called it, he was really popular on all that. Anyway, it's a pretty big deal. He got Phil Spector to come and do all that, and he had George Harrison. I know he was there playing on some songs. I think Ringo might have even been on the album. I can't remember. I do know George Harrison played on some stuff, so that was kind of cool. A little Beatle reunion there with George and John, at least, anyways, for part of it. Him and Paul were not getting along at all, so they were not playing on each other's albums at all. There's only two that never, George and Ringo would collaborate. George never collaborated with Paul, I don't think, but Ringo would collaborate with all three, and then George would collaborate with John and Ringo, of course. Paul really didn't collaborate. He would collaborate with Ringo, I think, but not with Paul and George, or not with John and George, but, there's a lot of issues going on at this point. But what was interesting about the documentary is kind of talking about how they would get the whole group together, and I think even what's the name, Klaus Vorman might have been there, a friend of theirs that was a bass player. I think he might have even played on there. So I think they got a lot of friends and stuff like that to come over, and they'd come over and they'd be eating breakfast, or lunch or something like that. Cause not thinking about it, I don't think John ever was an early riser. I think he was always kind of a late riser. So I think they'd come over, wait for John, and then they'd be just hanging out. And then Phil Spector would walk in, and he'd be like in suit and tie. He'd be like very well dressed, I guess. And he always wore sunglasses. I think he was kind of a weird fella, but if I remember right, he was always wearing like sunglasses and a suit, and it seemed like he was always serious. And he would walk in, and as soon as he walked in, John would be like, "All right, let's get to work," and they would get up and go to the studio and start on working on his songs. I think everybody was very casual except for Phil Spector, if I remember right from the documentary. But yeah, what a banger of an album. And I got this out so I can look at what's on the album. I'm not sure what's first, so I'm just gonna go by what this is. But you got songs like, of course, Imagine, huge hit. Grip Inside, actually a pretty good song. I like off there. Jealous Guy, amazing song. I love that song. One of his bigger hits, I think. Off here, though, it wasn't a big single or anything. It's one I've heard many times. It's So Hard. It's okay. The one song I don't like on here is I Don't Want to Be a Soldier Mama. I Don't Want to Die. 6 minutes, way too long, very repetitive. I mean, it just repeats itself. And yeah, I wish they would have taken that off or changed it, done something else, because that song I didn't like on here. But, Give Me Some Truth, Oh My Love, really great, beautiful song. How Do You Sleep, a song you have to talk about. Really good rock song. It's like the most rocker song on the album, because most of the songs are really piano ballads, and it's very pop ballad album. Overall, it's interesting because John's kind of known as the rocker out of the group coming out. I feel like he was really good rock singer, and he really became a good guitar player too in the Beatles. And coming out though, and he had some rock songs coming out in Plastic Ono Band, and then you get to this, and it's really a soft pop album, which is interesting. A lot of piano, and John's not known for his piano, but at this point, I don't know, he kind of changed his sound a little bit, maybe. I don't know, because Imagine, beautiful piano, of course. Jealous Guy, beautiful piano. Like I said, Oh My Love, beautiful piano. How, also really great song off here. Everything, just piano, just amazing on this album. And you don't think of that of John as much as you do Paul, of course. It was great on piano. But then you have How Do You Sleep, really good rock song, I think. I really like the song. But it is obviously, he wrote it as a diss to Paul. Because Paul came out with Ram first, I guess, it must have been. And he had a song about too many people, which I guess it was kind of a diss towards John, because like I said, Paul and John weren't getting along at this point. They fought a lot over management, and then they had to sue each other, I think, for the songwriters. I don't know, whatever, dealing with the Beatles and the company and Apple company and all that. And so Paul wrote that song, which is not that terrible of a song, I don't think, as far as dissing somebody. And it's very subtle. But this is not a subtle song. John definitely came up with this song, was like, I'm going to hit Paul hard with it, which is just John's very revengeful type of person, very vindictive kind of person. And it's interesting, the documentary, like, George Harrison's, who's not a fan of Paul either, even thought the song was going too far, which is kind of interesting. Even George was like, come on, John, and other guy, I remember other guys were like, interviewed for that documentary. It was like, it's like, yeah, I was turning to John after I heard the song. It's like, you can't do that. You can't write this song. Anyways, but yeah, John can do what he wants. But man, there's, trying to think. My favorite line is, the only thing you done was yesterday. Talking about the song Yesterday was like the only good song Paul ever wrote, which is absolutely insane. He wrote so many great songs, and John knew that. That was a terrible line there. And Since You've Gone, You're Just Another Day, which Another Day I know was I think of the Paul song that he did. And the whole song is, How Do You Sleep at Night? It's like, those freaks was right when they said you were dead. Of course, this whole thing about Paul is dead, conspiracy. The one mistake you made was in your head. I mean, it's like, lyrically, it's a terrible song, because I love Paul, and I think this is so wrong, but yet it's a catchy song. I actually quite enjoy it. It's one of my favorite ones. Oh, Yoko, actually a really good song. And I hate Yoko Ono. Like, she's a horrible person, and horrible musician, obviously, and can't sing worth a lick. And I think ruined the Beatles. But I do like the song, Oh Yoko. It's a nice little song. Anyways, but that's some of the music on here. like I said, overall, really great, like soft pop album that John puts out, and puts a lot of beautiful music and the lyrics are absolutely amazing. Like I said, Jealous Guy, one of his best written songs, I think. Obviously, Imagine, I didn't like the lyrics, but I get the idea behind it. Let's get along kind of thing. But Jealous Guy is so good. I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm sorry that I made you cry. I didn't want to hurt you. I'm just a jealous guy. I was feeling insecure. You might not love me anymore. I was trying to catch your eye. Thought you were trying to hide. I don't know. Lyrically, it just really explains like the trouble with relationships and stuff. Anyways, but yeah, really great stuff here from John, and definitely one you have to check out if you haven't checked this one out. Out of John's discography. Obviously, you should know the song or this album if you're a music fan. But if not, man, I can't recommend enough. Yeah, so let's go to my top 3 favorite songs off of here. Like I said, so many good stuff here. Like I said, Oh My Love, just barely missed out. Oh Yoko, I thought was really good. Even How Do You Sleep, I thought was good. Crippled Inside, not a bad song. But number 3, I'm going with How, absolutely amazing song up here. Again, just a really beautiful, lyrically, or melody, great piano. John's vocals, just really great on here. But yeah, it's an amazing song. It's not as well known, I don't think, but again, yeah, just great lyrically, talking about, how can you go forward without knowing what you're facing, is one of the lines here. Great line. How can you go forward if you don't know which way to turn? So it's kind of this, how can you go through life kind of thing. And yeah, really great introspective song, but yeah, really beautiful song. How, at number 3. Number 2, I did put Imagine in there, and I know it's hard because I know my dad hates the song, and he would be like, he doesn't want that song anywhere in here. I think it's because it's just taken a whole life on its own, and it's become a very politicized type song, and so it kind of ruins. But I still put it number 2 because I just think the piano, oh man, bum 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 bum. That piano is just absolutely amazing and really makes that song. Besides John just absolutely killing on vocals and all that. And I guess I get that he was writing about, yeah, I would love to Furby get along too. It's just not going to happen. But I get the sentiment that, yeah, it'd be nice if, I think religion's important, though. It says, imagine there's no heaven, imagine there's no religion. It's like, well, as a Christian, I hope that, I know there's a heaven, and I'm glad there's a heaven because that's a good place to go when I die, and you want to go to heaven if you die. So I don't get the idea of imagine no heaven, but, and no religion. It's like, well, religion's pretty important in my life, so I disagree with that part. But I understand he's saying, people go to war over religion. So that's why he's saying no religion. But it's like, yeah, but you just can't take out religion just because of that. But anyways, still, still a really beautiful song, Imagine. So it's number 2. Number 1, I went with what I talked about before. Number 1, Jealous Guy is my favorite John song of all time, and favorite song on this album. And like I said, it's just beautifully written about, relationships and, the fact that inside of us we get jealous. It's kind of a human nature sometimes to get jealous, and then to react in a way that might not be a good way to react to situations, and getting in trouble by your loved one because you get angry or whatever. And he talks about I was insecure, and yeah, we're insecure as human beings. We get very insecure. It's just it's a sinful nature thing that we have. And so I think it's really beautifully written about, yeah, we fight because, the truth is that we don't try to talk about, but the truth is, yeah, sometimes we get jealous, whether it's a guy or girl in a relationship, and it kind of hurts things, and something that you need to get over. But it's just, again, beautiful piano, beautiful song. John sings it just wonderfully. Yeah, I absolutely love the song. Number 1, Jealous Guy. So definitely check those 3 songs out if you haven't heard them. Definitely check this album out. Imagine. Number 19 on my list. So so that's my list, or my video today. And thank you for watching this video. Thank you for liking it. And thank you. And please comment what do you think about this album. What's your favorite songs off of it? Love to hear or read your thoughts. And just thank you to all my subscribers for supporting the channel. I appreciate you all, and I hope you have